Welcome to the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. My name is Rob Murgatroyd, and I'm a former doctor turned lifestyle entrepreneur. Each week, I interview some of the best minds on the planet on the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. Come take this journey with me. Excuses are over. It's time to live.
I don't take pride in my ears for the music business or my eyes for the movie business. But if I have one talent in business, it seems to be to identify great talent in other people. You can't be all things to all people at all times if you're busy, but you can establish priorities. You know, we probably only can have a handful or less priorities at a time. I have four. You know, my family and my friends, my work, my fitness, and charitable work and mentoring. How can I be better at what I choose to do? How can I learn more? How can I be kind even when I don't feel like it? You know, how can I make this day beautiful?
All right, before we jump into this episode, I want to invite you to be considered for my Work Hard, Play Hard Mastermind by completing an application at workhardplayhardmastermind.com. So this mastermind is not like any mastermind you may have been to or heard of, I promise you. This mastermind is for 6 to 7 figure entrepreneurs that are working too damn much and aren't taking the time to have amazing experiences around the world with an incredible tribe of people. So every 100 days or so, I drop you into new experiences that are specifically designed to elevate your thinking, to give you new ideas. Look, you get your best ideas not staring at a computer. And actually, this is the way high-level people really collaborate with each other. They do it over a glass of champagne, watching the sunset in the south of France. And we'll be doing things just like that. In fact, we'll be taking a vintage car ride through the French Riviera this summer, and we'll be truffle hunting in Florence in the fall, to name just a few of the experiences so that I can give you a feel for it. So if you are ready to do some fun stuff around the world and really, really want to level up your tribe in one shot, fill out an application at workhardplayhardmastermind.com. We'll jump on a call and we'll see if it's a good fit. All right, let's jump into today's episode. What's up, everybody? This is Rob Murgatroyd, and welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard show. This episode features Strauss Zelnick at Strauss Zelnick. So I wanted to have Strauss on the show because he really exemplifies the work hard, play hard lifestyle in such a real way. So on the work side, he was the chairman and CEO of Columbia Music. He was the chief executive officer of BMG Entertainment. He was the president and chief operating officer at 20th Century Fox, which, by the way, is where he greenlit Dirty Dancing, which we get into. He got his MBA from Harvard Business School. He got his law degree from Harvard Business School. I can go on and on and on. But what's interesting to me is on the play side, he decided that he was going to get younger every year. And at 61, he looks like a 30-year-old. No, really? Google him. Strauss Zelnick. Go check it out. He looks like a 30-year-old. So the fact that he was willing to give me the time of day for this interview speaks volumes for who he is. So please enjoy this interview with Strauss Zelnick. Strauss, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know what? I am super excited that you're willing to take the time to do this with us today. It really means a lot to me. And I thought that what we can do is we can kind of break it up into 3 parts. First, we'll talk a little bit about the kind of work you've done in the past, maybe talk about some strategies that you've had to achieve the level of success you have. Then I'd like to flip it and move into fulfillment and talk more about what you're doing with fitness and the book that you created. And then we'll wrap up with some rapid fire questions. Cool?
Sounds good to me.
So I think a good jumping off point would be to take you back to Boston in the early 60s. Can you describe for us what it was like growing up with 5 siblings?
Well, it was busy and it was a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a lot of fun at times. Other times it was challenging. You know, my folks had made sure to get a house that was big enough so we could each have our own bedroom, which they thought was an important idea. I'm not sure I agree. When I raised my own kids, I insisted that my boys share a room because I thought that was probably healthy. But so we each had a certain amount of privacy, but there was a good deal of chaos. There's a lot of love in the family, and there were also challenges, like all families.
Yeah, I bet. Your dad was a lawyer, and you've sort of described him as more of an intellectual. Do you think that was one of the reasons that inspired you to get into Harvard and then, ultimately move on to getting your law degree and MBA degree?
My parents were very recessive parents about what I did in school and what I sought to do professionally. They weren't a tiger mom or dad. To the contrary, they were very supportive. They tended to be, whatever I did was good. I didn't have the kind of parents that if you brought home an A-, they said, well, you could have gotten an A. Or if you brought home an A, they said you could have gotten an A+. And they also didn't project onto me their goals, for me. I was able to forge my own path. And there was a long period of time when I wanted to be a creator. I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. I wanted to be a writer. And that was fine with them too. And they were supportive of that. They didn't say, hey, you need to go to a certain school or go to grad school at all. But the reason it's an insightful question is I didn't have any interest in being a lawyer practicing law. I really had an interest in running entertainment companies. But I did apply to law school. And one of the reasons I chose to go to law school is that my father had gone to the same law school and I knew it would mean something to him. And he'd never asked anything of me. And I thought actually it'd be a nice way to honor him. And I think actually he was really touched when I went to law school. As it turns out, it was a great experience. I still didn't want to be a lawyer, but I learned a great deal in law school, and I'm glad I had the education.
Do you think are your kids of college age yet?
Yeah, my boys have already graduated.
Did they go on to Ivy League schools like you did?
No, they went to, I didn't go to an Ivy League college. I went to Wesleyan, which is a small school in the Northeast. And they also went to a small school in the Northeast called Williams.
Interesting. Okay. How did you get the nickname The Prince from your brothers and sisters?
You've done altogether too much research. So I didn't find this out until years later. Let's see. I always liked nice things. I grew up in it. My dad was a lawyer. He was successful. We had a nice household, but we were by no means wealthy. But I think there was no secret that I liked nice things, and I liked sports cars and nice clothing. And I always made money. So, I was one of those kids who worked after school and worked on the weekends. So I always had spending money. And I think there was some sense that, I think that they felt like I deserved that nickname.
You mentioned earlier, from early on, you had a dream to head a movie studio, which is interesting because not a lot of people, at such a young age would have that dream. To what do you attribute that drive to at such a young age, really?
Well, I mean, I'd love to, give it some flattering characteristic, but it'd be hard to. First of all, I didn't even go to the movies as a kid. It wasn't on, we weren't really allowed to watch television. My folks didn't take us to movies. We didn't have suites in the house. So I don't know where I came up with the idea that making movies was something for me, but I did. I think I had some sense that it was, about as far away from Boston as you could go, and that it was glamorous, and that, there was money involved. I think that's what I thought, but I'm not sure. It was so long ago. I mean, I was a little kid.
Yeah, right. In your senior year at Harvard, you did an internship with Viacom. Can you tell us the story of being given an assignment to review, if my research is right, 10,000 movie contracts to determine whether Viacom had the rights to some Sinatra movies?
No, not quite. I mean, I was in what's called rights clearance, which is a part of the business affairs department where you figure out if the company can exploit some rights in a certain way. And Viacom had been spun out of CBS as a so-called syndication company when the laws changed in the US. They've subsequently been changed back. So this is ancient history. And the rights that Viacom exercised were to license rights to play largely old TV shows, but also some old movies made for television for broadcast television after the network run, both in the U.S. and outside. And then this new medium came along, and I was, this was the beginning of my career, I guess, as a new media guy. And the new medium was video cassette distribution, also known as home entertainment. And, companies were suddenly making a lot of money taking properties they had made for maybe for cinemas or for broadcast television and repurposing them and selling them on video cassette. So the folks at Viacom wanted to know if they had the right to take those titles and distribute them on video cassette, or whether those rights had stayed with CBS. So that's called rights clearance. So I literally went into like this little cubicle with 10,000 contracts stacked up around me. It was really depressing. And I looked at that was going to be my summer. And and by the way, I'm not the most detail-oriented person on earth. That's not an attribute, incidentally. So, but I am reasonably clever. So I realized that virtually all the contracts, because I started randomly reading them, had the same grant of rights, which is the explanation for what rights you have. And so I went to one of the business affairs execs and I said, do all the CBS contracts have the same rights grant? And he said, yeah, they all do, except for the Frank Sinatra movies of the week. I was like, oh, okay, are you absolutely certain? He said, yes, I'm certain. So I thought, well, now all I have to do is determine what the grant is and whether they're all the same. So the grant was the same. And I think I read like 200 grants, but all you had to read was one paragraph. So that took a couple days. And then I read all the Sinatra contracts, and indeed the grant was different. And then it was easy to interpret that, the nature of the grant. So I went to the head of the business affairs department at the end of the week, and I said, well, I'm all done. And he said, you can't possibly be done. And I said, well, it turns out I'm all done, and you have video cassette distribution rights in all of the material except for the Sinatra MOWs. And of course, that was an heroic moment, because it was as if I had delivered all these rights unexpectedly. Of course, all I did was read the contract. But that led me to get a whole lot more responsibility that summer at Viacom, and I got to work on a whole bunch of interesting stuff.
Is that sort of a thread throughout how you approach things, looking for sort of that way that you don't have to look through 10,000 contracts?
Well, that would describe that. I mean, I would like to think my career is built on more than just being the laziest guy on earth, but I do think I'm reasonably practical, and in everything that you do, one way to get through a lot of complex material is just read everything endlessly. And the other way to do it is find what really matters and focus on that. And there's a time and a place for everything. There's certainly times when you absolutely have to be meticulous and detail-oriented. And while I may not necessarily be wired that way, I'm able to do that work when I need to. And then there are other times where pattern recognition and a small amount of research will get you to the same place. I guess the trick is knowing the difference. Yeah.
We're going to have to jump around to a lot of different places because you have lived one amazing freaking life. I got to tell you. I mean, I could literally do 12 hours with you. So I'm going to have to bounce around to different areas that I think people will find really interesting. If we fast forward a bit in your career, can you take me back to the moments that you had to decide if you were going to greenlight the movie Dirty Dancing, and maybe talk about what it felt like or feels like to greenlight something that could really go either way?
Well, I was new to the movie business. I was so new. I was really clueless. And because I had come out of international television distribution and home entertainment, and now Vestron was making movies, and this was the first one that I had to opine on as president of the company. And so the team came in, and including the producer and the writer, director, and the choreographer. And they started pitching. And, usually greenlight meetings don't really work this way in the real world, but it did then. So they actually did the whole pitch of the movie, even though they've been working with our creative teams for a while. They did a pitch, and the pitch included, this is going to redefine the way young women look at their lives. This will establish new trends in the way young women dress. This will have hit records. This movie will win an Oscar. This will be the highest grossing film of all time, independent film of all time, and the like. They made all those promises. And so the more they make promises, the more I'm thinking, oh, please, really? I mean, none of this is going to happen. And I didn't say that. I'm thinking it to myself. And, how unrealistic is this? And the truth is, I didn't actually find the project all that compelling. It was set in the Catskills. The leads were not, Jennifer Grey wasn't really known at all then. Patrick Swayze was sort of kind of a minor star. In fact, Vestron had his first picture in its catalog. But he was a minor star and a dancer, talented. And I thought the story was a little corny and pedestrian, frankly. But, we were in the business of making low-budget movies, and the creative team was incredibly passionate about it. So I said yes. And of course, the picture redefined the way young women looked at themselves, and established new trends in the way they dressed. It hit records. Picture won an Oscar, and it went on to become the highest-grossing independent film of all time. So what did I know?
I mean, it's crazy. Does that come from a gut reaction, or were you just, sort of crowdsourcing it?
No, I want to be really clear. I really appreciate creative work, and I love entertainment. I am not the creator in chief, and you can tell by that story that my experience of it was not, I get it, and I have a vision for it, and I see it. My experience was, we have an incredibly talented creative team. They've been working on this for a long time. They really, really believe in it. I need to support, their vision and their passion. And, so the punchline is not how awesome I am at selecting movies, because I already told you I wasn't really very compelled by it. So I suppose had I been left to my own devices, I might well have said no. The reason I said yes is the team believed in it. The team was Steve Ruther, Mitchell Canold, and Ruth Vitale, and that was their work, and they believed in it, and they deserve all the credit for it. I was just an innocent bystander who didn't get in the way. I have another story like that, which is when I took over BMG, I knew as much about the record business as I had known about the movie business when I started at Vestron, which is to say zero. And part of BMG was the RCA label, and the RCA label had been underperforming for a very long time and had no rock and roll hits. And so what I did was, because we had a very limited amount of resources at RCA, we were losing money, I didn't want to lose money. So I walked around the hallways to meet everyone and said, look, while we're meeting, can you just, again, this is years ago when there still was a robust record business before everything changed with the advent of digital distribution. So it's the late 90s. And I said, could you just play me the unreleased record you're most excited about? And because I wanted to see what we had on deck and if we had anything at all that, maybe could turn into a hit, because the company hadn't had a hit in so long. So everyone played me the same single. And unlike motion picture business, I actually knew something about the music business. I had been a singer-songwriter. I'm not a successful one, but I was a musician. I actually was a trained musician, and I certainly had a point of view about music. So I'm listening to this single, and I have to admit, I didn't hear much in it. It wasn't a traditionally constructed song. It didn't fit neatly within a radio format, and it ran a little long, and it didn't have a hook, really, and it certainly didn't have a chorus or a bridge. I don't really know what to make of it. But every office I went into, everyone played me the same single. At the end of that day, we had a group meeting, and we really had to make a decision about what unreleased artists we were going to get behind, because we didn't have the marketing monies available to get behind more than one meaningful project to start. And everyone voted for this artist. And I said, because it was true, I'm not sure I hear it. In fact, I'm pretty sure I don't hear it. But if you all are super passionate about it, you believe in it, we're going to get behind it. And we did. And that was Dave Matthews. And that was his first hit record. And of course, he went on to huge success. And that was really the regeneration of the RCA label. Really brought us back into a leadership position in rock and roll. Brought us a whole bunch of other acts. And ultimately, of course, brought us the boy bands and the girl bands, too.
So that's 2 times you got out of the way.
Yeah, I got out of the way. Boy, it would be tempting to take credit for both, but really the story is more true about me, which is I don't take pride in my ears for the music business or my eyes for the movie business or my game playing skills in the video game business. I don't even play video games. But if I had one talent in business, it seems to be to identify great talent in other people, to be willing to take meaningful risks on that talent. And not only to support their passions, but to insist that they pursue their passions. And then to make sure they work within a business enterprise that's rational, highly effective, well-capitalized, and kind. And I am really proud of that. I'm not sure it's much of a skill, but it is my skill. And I will say that, our enterprises over the years have delivered an unparalleled hit ratio in every entertainment business that there is.
Is that a gut feeling when you have the person in front of you that you're about to hire?
A gut feeling would imply that I have some sort of magical ability to see inside people. It really isn't. It's because I sit down and talk to them, but you wouldn't know it from this conversation, but I really, really listen and I get to know who people are. And with creative people, I think it's such an overused and hackneyed term now, but you can tell if someone is authentically creative by the way they present themselves and their approach and their project. And of course, they have to have a track record too. We're not making it up as we go along. These are the enterprise. I've been fortunate to work in enterprises. Maybe they were turnarounds, but they've been around a long time, including Take-Two. When we came to Take-Two, it had a lot of issues. Take-Two had already been around for 14 years when I got here. It didn't just, I didn't create it. It didn't just show up. They've had a lot of experiences and they've had a lot of success with Grand Theft Auto when I got here. It was not big.
Speaking of Take-Two, in 2007, you agreed to help turn around Take-Two, which is, for those people that don't know what Take-Two is, it's a video game. They're publishers of Grand Theft Auto and NBA 2K, and now have a revenue of over $2 billion, which is...
This year, very nearly $3 billion.
$3 billion, which is, 4 times what it was before you got there. From just a super high level, broad stroke perspective, do you have any, pre-game ritual or anything that you do, or maybe things that you don't do when you're thinking about coming into a company and turning it around?
Well, there's certain things you would always do when you look at an enterprise, which is first, you want to make sure that it's highly efficient. Generally, you can reduce costs at companies, and by definition, if we're doing a turnaround, the company's got some issues. So you look at costs, and that, to some people's ears, that sounds like fire people. That's not what I mean at all. You look typically at what your vendors are charging you, what the costs are unrelated to your personnel are, and usually you can reduce those through negotiation or making choices. So, we'll shut down unnecessary offices or renegotiate supplier agreements or the like, cut down marketing expenses. And it's really only after we dig in for a period of time that we begin to look at the staffing and make sure it's the correct number of people, if the right people are in the right jobs. And sometimes, of course, that can mean that we reduce headcount. Although in the case of Take-Two, we've only increased headcount over the years. And when we first got to reduced headcount, but it was brief. Since then, we've been in growth mode, which would obviously be our preference. So efficiency is part of the strategy. The second part is creativity. And, all of these businesses are creative businesses. We want the best and the brightest to do their best work. And then, of course, we want typically more than we had before. If you're a hit-driven business, you want more hits. That falls within creativity. And finally, innovation, so that whatever business you're in now, the businesses that we choose to become involved with are going to be influenced by digital technology, and transformation will occur whether you like it or not. So we try to be on the leading edge of that transformation and innovate accordingly. Just as an example, when I arrived here at Take-Two, 100% of our revenue came from physical distribution. And today, maybe on average, 65% or a little bit less comes from physical distribution. The rest is digital distribution. That only worked here because we built a digital distribution team initially, led by just one person, Steve Glick's team. Now it's quite a robust team. And they set out to make sure that our products were readily available in digital outlets all around the world. That's what they did. We have the broadest digital distribution of any company in the business.
Okay, amazing. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about how you found yourself in the world of fitness. You are in your 60s. Are you 62 now?
Don't make it worse than it is. No, I'm still 61.
All right. 61. Okay. You're 61 years old. I am 52 years old. You look better than most 20-year-olds. I'm sure you hear that every day. I'm not saying anything that you don't hear. You do. So let's just, let's just call it what it is. All you got to do is Google your name, and there's a lot of pictures with you with your shirt off, and there's no way. Every time I look at that picture of you, that black and white shot, I said, there is no way that man is 61 years old. Can you tell us the moments that you decided that something needed to change in your health and fitness?
Well, it's tempting to tell a radical transformation story, but I'm fortunate in so many ways. But one of them is that I never tended to fat. I was one of those annoying people who could eat whatever he wanted, not gain weight. That isn't true anymore. I have to pay a little more attention, but it was true. So on the one hand, I wasn't carrying around a lot of extra weight, but on the other hand, I wasn't super fit. And it was in my late 30s that I read, I believe my late 30s, maybe early 40s, that I read a book called Younger Next Year. And it basically took the position that the view that you have to decline from middle age on is incorrect. And the way to avoid that is to exercise 5 or 6 days a week, strictly limit how much alcohol you drink, eat a moderate diet, and try to live a happy life. And I took that to heart. And I had previously been, your standard sort of 3-day-a-week gym guy, bring something to read, maybe do some work, maybe talk to people. At the end of an hour, I figured it was a workout, take a shower, and I felt like I'd had a workout. And I was in fine condition by most people's standards for, a late 30s, early 40s guy, but I wasn't particularly athletic, and I wasn't in great shape. So the book really motivated me to pick up the pace, and I started going to the gym more, but I really wasn't very expert in what I was doing. So I was mostly like doing the elliptical, and, newsflash, the elliptical is not a great way to get in shape. It's better than sitting around watching television, eating potato chips, but only marginally. So I would do the elliptical on my cardio days, and then I'd do a very simple sort of 40-minute weight circuit on weights days. And finally, my wife, who is not a big fan of my attachment to fitness, said to me, you really should think about getting a trainer. And I said, I don't really want a trainer. They're annoying. They talk to you. And moreover, I'm in better shape than all the trainers I see at the gym. She said, yeah, well, I just made a trainer. Trust me, you're not in better shape than he is. I said, I don't know. I don't think I want to get a trainer. And she said, well, let me put it to you this way. For a guy who spends as much time at the gym as you do, you're not really in such great shape. So,
that must have hurt.
So I hired the trainers, and his name was John Kim. And I trained with him 3 days a week at 6 a.m. for 2 years. It was absolutely brutal. And he really, whipped me into more decent shape. And coincident with that, a buddy of mine and I decided to get road bikes, and I started cycling. So I was doing some cardio that actually was meaningful, and I really enjoyed it. And I realized that training with other people, whether it was a trainer or a friend, was fun. And I also began to develop some skills, although it's really not hard to cycle. Anyone can do it. And I realized I enjoyed building my athletic skills. And I also began to feel that seeking to build those skills stretched me emotionally, because I started doing things that were more and more out of my comfort zone. And, most of my days spent in my comfort zone. I feel pretty comfortable running businesses. I love the entertainment, media, communications business. I like investing. I like my family. I like my wife. I spend most of my days doing things where I feel comfortable and I like what I do. So by taking on these meaningful and more difficult athletic challenges, I pushed myself to a place emotionally I hadn't been ever, maybe. And I'm not a quick study, actually, athletically. I may be in other ways. And so it takes me a long time to get good at new sports. But you know what? I persevere. I'm not judgmental about myself. And eventually I seem to get there. And I don't necessarily take pride in it. I don't think it would come across that way, because the implication would be I would say, hey, I'm really awesome at this. And it isn't how I feel. And it isn't objectively how I am. But I enjoy it. And I like the fact that I make progress. I'm always making progress. And the reason I wrote the book is I thought it was important to tell that story, that you can make progress at any age. You can actually do amazing things at any age. You can be your best self at any age.
I picked up the book. It's really an amazing book. And, I have a lot of friends who are executives, and, they're always complaining about, if you had my schedule and you were on a plane from New York to LA as often as I am, I wouldn't be able to be in this level of shape. And so now, for once, I could literally hand them this book and say, Google this guy's accomplishments, Google this guy's body, and look what he did. So for the executive that is, largely ignoring this area of their life, or is, saying that it's not possible for me to do, how would you tell them to start this and to be able to hold themselves accountable to get it done?
Well, the first is ask yourself, what do you want? Because they may simply not be interested in it. And I'm not judgmental of people's desires and goals. But if what you truly want is to be fit, or maybe you don't care about being fit, but you want to live a long and healthy life, either way, then you got to start moving. Then what I'll say is, you can't be all things to all people at all times if you're busy, but you can establish priorities. We probably only can have a handful or less of priorities at a time. I have 4. My family and my friends, my work, my fitness, and my charity and charitable work and mentoring and coaching work. That's it. Those are my priorities. So there are things I care about that just don't fall on the list as much as I like seeing movies. I do like movies, but I can't always take the time for it because I focus on my 4 priorities. You get to choose too, and I bet you have 3. You're an effective guy, clearly good at what you do. I bet you have somewhere fewer than 5 priorities that matter to you. I've never run into anyone who has 10 priorities who's effective across all of them. And the people with 10 priorities are, running around, in a scattered way and usually aren't even super happy. So my advice is know what you want and own it. And if what you want is, I like to drink, I like to eat, I like to, and I don't, and I understand the consequences, then they should do that. I'm not going to hear anything from me, but you should know what you want. And then if you know what you want, you understand, I think, as an adult, that you have to choose. And it's a uniquely American fantasy to believe you can have it all. Can't have it all.
No, this is great. I love that simple, 3, 4, 5 priorities and just stay in that zone. You told a story in your book of how you and your wife took a hot yoga class, and you came out of the class and you said that was a religious experience, and she came out and she said, "I'll never do that again." Is it a challenge for you to be way more into fitness than she is?
Well, she's into other things. She rides horses and she likes walking, and both of those things take time. No, it's a challenge. Her attitude about it is a challenge at times, and she feels the same way about me. But I think usually we're pretty good about bridging the gap and respecting each other. But yeah, sometimes she finds my attachment to fitness really irritating, and I find her irritation about my attachment to fitness really irritating. That's true. That's all right. We've been married for 29 years, and we seem to have gotten used to it.
Yeah, well, something's working. I know that you have stopped drinking. I love a glass of wine at night, and I think you used to drink a little bit more than you do now, because I think you don't drink at all. Do you struggle with things like alcohol and wanting a glass when you're going out socially with friends, or it's Sunday and you're watching Netflix? If you do that, wanting to have some dessert, how do you deal with those, let's call it 2 things, alcohol and desserts?
I eat dessert and I don't drink alcohol, and I try not to struggle with either. No, I don't miss drinking. It wasn't good for me, and it was good to give it up. I tried to give up eating dessert, and I really didn't like that. I would love to be in better and better shape, but I don't want to be someone whose life is just and by the way, people like this are so annoying anyhow, who, just a description of discipline is your life. It would be better not to eat sugar and processed carbs of any sort. They're not really good for you. I can't argue that they're good for you. But I do think a life of some moderation is probably good for you. And I don't think asking yourself to be disciplined about everything all the time is typically good for most people. There are some people for whom it works. My buddy Mark Perry, who has the website Built Lean, if you go on that site, there's a picture of Mark. That's actually what he looks like. Mark eats a very strict diet. It works for him. He doesn't feel deprived at all. He'll tell you he doesn't feel deprived. And he looks great. And the reason he looks great, he trains very intelligently, and he trains, reasonably hard. And he'll acknowledge this, and anyone who knows anything about fitness will too. Once you get a modicum of weight-bearing exercise, to look incredibly shredded is basically all about weight management. And weight management comes from, how many calories you put in your body, and to a much, much, much lesser extent, what the nature of those calories are. He's able to do it. I don't think he misses dessert at all, but I would really miss it. So you've got to be true to who you are. I'll never look as good as Mark, but that's okay. Or at least it's okay for today. And if I reserve the right to change my mind.
Yeah. What's your biggest challenge now at 61?
Oh, for me, the challenge is always, how do I grow? How can I be better at what I choose to do? How can I learn more? How can I have better, deeper, more intimate relationships? How can I let go of things that are holding me back? How can I be of service to others? How can I be kind even when I don't feel like it? How can I make this day beautiful? And most days I rise to the challenge on most of those things from my own point of view. And every day I fall short in one or more ways.
Yeah, for sure. Do you wear a wearable? Where I first learned about you is on the Whoop podcast.
No, I don't. I did for a while. So the way I'm wired, if I wear a wearable, and I whatever the data is that I look at, my only emotional takeaway is how woefully inadequate I am. And I realized it just wasn't motivating me. It just made me feel bad. And I took the computer off my bike too for the same reason. I realized I'd be looking at the computer, not at the scenery. But my emotional experience of looking at the computer was I haven't ridden far enough and I haven't ridden fast enough. I never looked at the computer and thought, that was an amazing ride and I crushed it. And I realized, I don't know that it's a super healthy thing. At all times, I just got a trophy. I don't know that that's great. But equally, I don't necessarily think it's productive to only have the emotional experience that didn't work out so well, and I was vaguely pathetic. So I realized that for me, given my wiring, that wasn't being very kind to myself. And one of the things I strongly advise in my book is be gentle with yourself. Don't ask too much. And it's hard for me because I ask a lot of myself and of other people. I looked at it and I said, this isn't in service of my goals. It's not making me more fit. It's not making me work harder. It's just leaving me with kind of, sort of a small, minor sense of negativity. That wasn't being kind to myself. So I abandoned the devices and the computers. If you find it motivating, a lot of people do, great. And people who wear heart rate monitors, they find it motivating. And certainly if you're training for something competitive, depending on the sport, you kind of need to, you need to measure stuff. If you're training to be a professional cyclist, you need to measure your power output. You need to measure your heart rate. I'm not suggesting you should do it without it. I'm not making a suggestion for professional training.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, sometimes I wake up and I look at my recovery from the night before, and I have all of a sudden I have a bad day because my recovery was so bad the previous day, and I didn't even think I was upset.
Yeah, no. In fairness, and the Whoop device, I'd look at the quality of my sleep, and I never once looked at the device, and it never said to me, "Wow, you had a great night."
Every night it's like you got 3 minutes of deep sleep, and I'm like, "That's it." That's it. So we're going to wrap up with a couple of quick rapid fire questions. Just answer as quickly or as slowly as you like. It's basically a first thing that comes to mind. What would your friends say is one of your superpowers?
Kindness.
What's one thing you're afraid of right now?
Fear.
What book have you reread the most?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Chocolate.
If you had to give a TED Talk on nothing that you're known for or nothing that you speak about, and can really be on anything that you like or have a passion for or anything else at all, what would it be?
Salesmanship.
Interesting. Last question. Let's change it up a little bit. What one question would you like to ask me?
When you look at your life broadly, both now and looking ahead, what is it that you want?
To spend time with my 4-year-old and do a better job than I did with my 19-year-olds.
Good. Sounds like a plan.
Strauss, I was super nervous to do this interview with you because of your accomplishments and accolades, and I'm so glad I did. And I'm really, really grateful that you took the time to do this with me. And I just want to say that you're an incredible inspiration to a lot of people, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode and you know someone that needs some help in either stepping up their work hard game or their play hard game, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with them to help me get this movement out there. So if you like what you heard, head on over to iTunes, take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. So until the next episode, excuses are over. it's time to live.